So, Mr. Ricky Warwick, absolute pleasure to see you once again. You're back with this fantastic new album, Blood Ties. It's about to drop in just a
Thank
few
you.
days. How's it feeling?
It feels good. It's like Christmas to run up to an album. You get really excited, you know. So that's the only way I can describe it. The sort of the 2 weeks prior to it coming out is like Christmas when you're a kid. That's what it's like for me.
Absolutely. Well, this has been all full on Christmas. You had your Christmas single, and then right on to another Christmas. It's just Christmas every day for Ricky Warwick, eh?
Yeah, I wish it could be Christmas every day. There you go, and it is. Yeah, I have a lot to be thankful for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're going to talk about some Christmas stuff because I even want to have a little chat about some of your anti-Christmas songs over the years as well, which are very special to me. But let's first of all talk about Blood Ties. Fantastic new record, of course. It's been a couple of years since we had some new solo material, but you've brought in some special guests on this one as well, yeah?
Yeah, I'm in a very privileged position that a lot of people that influenced me or that I'm fans of have now become friends, and that's one of the magical things about doing what we do. Billy Duffy, I've known for over 30 years, since the early days of the Almighty. I've known Billy, so Billy and I go way back. Obviously, we were briefly in a band together with Circus Diablo when we put that record out. So I've been trying to get Billy on a record for ages, but just with schedules and blah blah blah, it's never worked out. This time, all aligned perfectly. And we were able to get Billy in the studio to play on a couple of tracks, which was amazing. Lita Ford, I didn't know Lita prior to making the record. A big fan of the Runaways, and when I wrote "Don't Leave Me in the Dark," I knew straight away that it had to be a duet, and I wanted somebody like Joan Jett, Lita Ford, and Chrissie Hynde, and through a weird twist of fate, my management actually ended up managing Lita, and I was like, hang on a minute. Hold that thought. I have a track. Can you send it to her? She said, Lita loved it. We met. She sang on the track. So that's great. Charlie Starr, I'm a huge Blackberry Smoke fan. I don't know Charlie. Charlie is a good friend of Keith Nelson's, my producer. And Keith brought Charlie in to play on the track Rise and Grind. And that was awesome. And Charlie killed it. And we still haven't met, though. We're friends on text now. That's great. And then obviously Tuck Smith, a big fan of Tuck's old band Biters, and Tuck's a bro. So we have him on there, and then our very own Ben Christo from Sisters of Mercy and the guitar player in the Fighting Hearts. So it was a no-brainer to have Ben involved.
Absolutely, no, fantastic. I mean, I think like the Hell of Me and You is like the one right now. I mean, I'm just getting to hear it like ahead of time, and that way like is
Thank you.
the more and more listens, the more tracks.
Yeah.
But that's the one that's really standing out for me right
tell you,
now.
Billy is great. Billy rolled up as Billy does. Billy's one of these people that's a rock star without trying to be a rock star. He just is. And he rolled up to the studio on his Triumph motorcycle, didn't bring a guitar, didn't bring an amp, walked in, picked a Les Paul from the guitars that we had in the studio and said, plug me into this amp. And instantly it sounded like Billy Duffy.
That's it. He just comes with that. But you're the same. You've got your signature voice, signature playing style as well, and most importantly, I think your songwriting style. That way, even just hearing a few of your lyrics, you sort of feel like you've got that whole signature thing. Was that something like early on that you found came to you quite quickly? Because it's one thing to be able to have a good voice, be able to play guitar and all that sort of stuff, but actually having something to say is the really unique part. So how quickly did that come together for you?
I mean, to be honest, it didn't. I was quite insecure when I started. I didn't think I was all that good, and I didn't think I was a great singer. Certainly didn't think I was a good guitar player. Thought I could write a half decent song. So over the years, it's a confidence thing, and like anything else, the more you put into it, the more you start to get out of it. And it really wasn't, I'd say, the last 25 years when I sort of did the first solo record that suddenly it all started coming together. The playing, the singing, and the songwriting just took a massive leap forward. And that's a confidence thing. I suddenly just thought, well, hang on a minute, obviously people must like what I do, otherwise they wouldn't buy the records or come to the shows. So taking that on board, I just thought, well, you know what, maybe I'm okay at this. And so that gave me some confidence. Being around some people, without name dropping, but Joe Elliott was a huge inspiration to me, and he really sort of gave me a good shaking and a good talking to, and said, look, you're good at this. Be good at it. Be better at it. And he pushed me a lot. So I may have been cocky in the early days of the Almighty and been arrogant and all that in the back when I was a youth, but that was all front. That was hiding a lot of insecurity back then, to be honest with you. And it's really the last 25 years that I've got very comfortable in my own skin. And I think I've developed better as a guitar player and as a vocalist and as a writer. And, again, you don't really care what people think. You have your style and your way of doing things, and it feels good to you, then that's okay.
That's it, being comfortable in your skin and not hiding as well. That's the thing. It's allowing to be vulnerable, and music is the thing that lets people in ultimately. And sometimes it's easy to put up a front, and you're saying there in the early days, there was maybe a little bit of an element of that. With some of your, in terms of like your sort of stage performance and all that sort of stuff, was there an element in that in terms of almost wearing a mask as well?
I've always been aware that, that we're there to entertain people and put on a show. And when I was a kid growing up and I would watch, rock stars on TV, they were rock stars. These people were, how do you get, they were like aliens. How do you get to be these people? And when I got the chance to start, making records and playing shows to people, I wanted to have that effect on them, a bit of a mystery, and put on a show. It was a way for me to get a lot of anger and aggression out on stage. Certainly with the Almighty in the early days, that was a whole thing. You probably, I'm sure you talk to a lot of people, Jonathan, you find a lot of people that turn to music are insecure, they're shy, and that stage gives them the chance to get away from that and get out of that sort of shyness and that insecurity and almost flourish and bloom, as it were. And for me, that certainly was. I was always quietly confident, but I was always going, doubting myself a little bit. But as soon as I hit that stage, that all went out the window. I was just like, this is my domain. This is it. I'm on for the next hour and a half. I'm going to rule up here, and I'm going to be untouchable. And that's the mindset I think you have to get into to perform.
Absolutely. Just circling back around to the new album, Blood Ties, and you mentioned Charlie Starr and he's on Rise and Grind. Yeah. Obviously, such a multi-talented, multifaceted sort of artist there, and it's fantastic to get a little flavour of on the track. But was that always the track that you felt this is what I would like Charlie to be involved in? Like, was there something particular?
Not at all. That's a great question. Not at all. It was. I can't take any credit for this at all. It was all Keith Nelson. Keith suggested Charlie, and I heard him on, like, Angels of Desolation, or one of the more sort of Americana vibey tracks.
Oh yeah.
But, that's what I hear Charlie Starr on because of Blackberry Smoke. And Keith goes, no, Charlie's going to be great on Rise and Grind. And I went, what? Really? That's the heaviest track on the album. I'm not really hearing that, how's that going to work, And Keith said, no, trust me, it's going to be great. And sent Charlie the track, and he loved it. And obviously what you hear is what he played is phenomenal. So I've got to give kudos to Keith and to Charlie for, it certainly wouldn't have been the track that I chose. I'm glad they picked it because I think it worked out great.
Yeah, it's an inspired choice, because that's the thing. I don't know if I would have known straight away. You're just hearing it's a great track. Yeah. And that's ultimately what it needs to be. The track needs to it can't just be some sort of like, oh yeah, this is cool because it's got a special guest. It's just a great track. And then when you go, oh wait, Charlie Starr, fantastic. So it clearly was something that was a little bit, maybe slightly out of his wheelhouse as well, but that combination just brought something special.
A great foresight on Keith for seeing that, because I didn't see it. So I can't take it.
What's Charlie's feedback on the track?
Oh, he's been great. He's been really gracious. He's written a lovely quote. It's the next track we're going to put out before the album drops. I think it comes out on Friday, Rise and Grind. So that's going to be the next track we release. And Charlie sent over just a really lovely quote and very gracious about me and about the song and everything. And so it's lovely to have that. And we're just real great honor to get him on there because he's as you said, he's such a talented musician and a great person.
Of course, a very, very cool guy. And Ricky, I think it's only right that you've got to feature on a Blackberry Smoke record now.
Right. I think so. You're right. You know what I mean? Keith Nelson's written quite a few songs with Charlie. I think he might have got one on the last record, the Blackberry Smoke album that came out. But look, I would be honored if he returned the favor. That would be huge. But I'm not expecting it. I'm just happy to have Charlie on my record,
Absolutely. And quite recently you've been back doing some stuff with the Almighty. Am I right in thinking you're just back from Japan?
We're just back from Japan about a month ago, which was great. We hadn't been over there for years.
Yeah.
So that was lovely to get back there. We did 3 shows. We did 1 in Osaka and 2 in Tokyo. So that was lovely. And we were just in the studio last week in Glasgow, of all places, recording something very, very special that will be revealed very soon.
Oh, fantastic
nice,
to hear.
It's nice being back with the guys. We're getting on great. The chemistry's still as strong as it ever was. The vibe's still there. And we're just doing it at our own pace. Everybody's going, you're going to do a tour, you're going to do a record. Well, no, we're just going to, it started off as a couple of shows to see how it went. Those went well. We're now adding in the odd festival. We've been in the studio messing about a little bit. So it's very organic, but we're not jumping back into it sort of head first and going, right, the band's back and we're going to, tour and do this and do that. We're enjoying it. We're enjoying this being sporadic and just doing this sort of, the 4 or 5 shows a year at the minute.
Absolutely. Now you mentioned there that, we'll find out in due course, I'm sure, what this is all going to be. But you mentioned there that some of the recording or something that you're putting together is actually happening in Glasgow. Is that is there a real purpose behind that, about doing it actually in that location where it all began?
I think so. And there was, when we got back together, when we did the reunion, the first reunion shows in 2023, we were adamant that we had to rehearse in the same rehearsal space that we rehearsed in when we were going in Glasgow. That was important to us. We tried to use as many of the original crew members that sadly, a lot of them are no longer with us, which is terrible. But we wanted to use as many of the original crew members from back in the day also. Because that was special, and those were special times. And, I know the bands, I know 3/4 of us are from Straven. So we're not, people go, they're not really from Glasgow, from Straven, but, come on, Glasgow's where we rehearsed and Glasgow's where we started playing. Yeah. So, the band's a Glaswegian band, whether you like it or not. And Andy McCaffrey's born and bred in Annie's land, so he'd have something to say about that, if anybody argued with him. So it's just special. I think we wanted to reconnect with everything from back in the day that was still there. Because sadly, like I said, we had lost some people that were very close to the band over the years. And that was one of the catalysts for us reforming as well, was the fact that, time's running out and life is short. It's a cliche, but it is. And so it was like, well, hang on a minute. We're all still here. We're all fit and well, thank goodness. So let's get out there and play. People have been asking for it constantly. So come on, let's give the people what they want,
Oh, absolutely. And it's fantastic to see, and you guys look like you're having a blast from all the little clips that I see online and what have you. I've not got a chance to see it yet, but I'm sure there'll be some London dates and stuff like that coming up soon. But when you look up the Almighty's, because I was wondering, I was thinking, I wonder where you first played. And when you actually look on the setlist.com, it actually has like a Hammersmith Odeon show in '88 or something like that has been like your first show. But you must have played many shows before then. What was the first show you can remember?
We didn't play. The whole thing was, we didn't play many shows. We actually got signed to Polydor on our 12th ever gig.
Wow.
And that was all planned. So the whole ethos behind it, we sat and we planned about strategically how, obviously it's a different time. There's no internet, there's no phones, there's no nothing back then. We wanted to make sure every gig would go off. So the first gig we ever played was Rooftops in Glasgow in March of 1988. And we had about 5 songs and we had to play a headline set. So we borrowed basically every Marshall cabinet we could from our buddies that were in bands, brought them into Rooftops, got a smoke machine and got 2 strobe lights, got horrendously drunk, played the 5 songs. I think we then played a couple of them again and then proceeded to jam for 25 minutes with the strobes on the whole gig and the dry ice. And there's about 14 people at that show. But one of the people at that show was a guy called Richard Heggie who wrote for Kerrang magazine. And he just wrote, I've just seen the greatest rock and roll show of my life, and printed it in Kerrang next week. Instantly, the phone starts ringing with record companies. We've done 1 gig at this point. And it's crazy. So what we'd come down, then we got down to London and played the legendary Marquee. And what our sort of plan was almost like a Viking raid. We would come to London, play the Marquee excruciatingly loud, blow the roof off the place, have a drink, get in a fight, annoy somebody, and then go back up the road to Glasgow. We wouldn't hang around. We wouldn't hang out with journalists. We wouldn't go to whatever club was on that, the place to be. So it was almost like, who the fuck were they? Who are these people? And we started getting loads of press and promo, and it started to build and build. So, you know, by our eighth or ninth gig, we were selling like the marquee. And we still were on side. We're on the front cover of Sounds. We still hadn't signed a record deal. But we've got 30, 40 labels knocking on the door going, what do you want? What do you need? So finally got to the point where, you know, we knew we had to take one of the offers because we wanted to make a record and everything. And Polydor had sort of been there from day one. And so we decided to, you know, they offered us a nice chunk of change, but certainly wasn't the biggest offer we had. But we thought out of loyalty and we liked the people there that we would with Polydor. Plus, Polydor was a legendary label, you know, the Who, Henry,
of course,
the Jam played all on Polydor. So that's what swung it. But it was just extraordinary how quickly and how well it happened. You know, a lot of kudos to our old manager, Tommy T, for just orchestrating it and playing it out that way. You couldn't do it now with just internet and stuff like that. The mystique wouldn't be there.
That's it. Well, it's what you did there was you went viral, but old school viral.
We did. And we created this mystique about the band, and people, there was a demand, you know, there's a demand for who are these guys? You know, why did they come to London and you know, blow up the PA and punch so-and-so? And, you know, not that I'm condoning violence, but we were kids.
Yeah.
You know, so it worked, and it worked really well. And I'm very proud of how the strategy that we used to sort of get the whole thing up and rolling.
That's it. And of course, you guys were, you know, right off the bat, fantastic. And you had the great songs and great stage performance and all of that stuff that could back up. But could you actually believe it was happening as quickly as it was?
It was hard to take in. You know, we were very arrogant and very obnoxious and very west of Scotland. And we sort of took it all in our stride. You know, it was almost too much too soon, to be honest with you. It was just coming at us at a phenomenal rate. And you get into the goldfish bowl bubble of that whole world. You know, we didn't care about the business. We didn't care about anything else. We just cared about playing and getting drunk and making a racket and getting in the studio. That was all we cared about. So a lot of naivety, which again is part of it. I mean, those early records wouldn't sound the way they sound if it wasn't for that, you know, naivety that we all had, you know, of not really knowing how to conduct ourselves in the studio or how gear worked as you learn, as you go on. So the mistakes were made, but those mistakes made it what it was, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, but for sure. And I mean, you're talking about getting in the studio in those early days. And of course, for Blood, Fire and Love, you're looking at like the following year that you're in the studio, and of course it's just gone past 35-year anniversary, mate. You do not look like a man who's had an album that came out over 35 years ago. Incredible.
I'm 60 next year. Can you believe that? It's crazy.
I do not believe it. I think you've been taking. I think you've been taking the substance.
I'm feeling really good, and I'm enjoying life. And I think, you know, if you've got your health and a lot of love around you, then, you know, we don't need much more.
Oh, well, it's definitely showing, mate, and you're well deserved of it. But, you know, on that debut record, you know, you did that in Abbey Road.
We did.
So talk us through that. I mean, you know, what
it starts before Jonathan. Polydor gave us an equipment advance. This wasn't the initial advance he gave us to do the record. He gave us another advance to go and buy equipment because we'd no gear. You know, we bought up gear. He gave us £25,000 back in 1988. So that's probably $100,000 now. So we were able to go into Sound Control was our record store in Glasgow, the old Sound Control. We were able to go into Sound Control on Jamaica Street and go, I'll have that. You know, something you dream about when you're a kid. And I bought the white Les Paul that, you know, people kind of know me for, off the wall in Sound Control at the start of 1989, right before we went into Abbey Road. We bought all this brand new gear. We got it into Abbey Road. We're in Studio 2 in Abbey Road where the Beatles did all that stuff, all that magical stuff. And I didn't know how to turn my Marshall on. Do you know what I mean? We were that naive, you know, how does this work? How does that? And it was just hilarious. And we were in there and it was just, none of us could. I still can't believe that happened. You know, I still have just being in there and recording in that legendary room, and the vibe that it gave off was just, used to get chills walking in there. It definitely had a vibe, you know, and what a incredible place to record, and any time, but your first album, I mean, come on, it was insane.
Absolutely no, incredible. And is there a proudest moment off that first record for you?
I think, you know, what it is just seeing all those songs finally get recorded. I make it sound easy that we were signing our 12th gig, but, you know, for that year leading up to that, we worked our asses off. You know, we rehearsed constantly, and we were always critiquing the songs. And I think just to get it over the line and to achieve all that and get the album done and hold the album and go, we did it. Here's Blood, Fire and Love. I think that's, you know, it was a great moment.
Absolutely, no, incredible. And just one more thing on the Almighty, because, you know, like I was saying, you know, you had that great Christmas song that just came out a couple of months ago, and, you know, it reminds me, you know, on the second record, you know, you get Bandaged Knees, which is like your
anti-Christmas song.
Yeah, your anti-Christmas song. Can you give us a little bit of the story behind that great song?
Yeah, thank you. Well, that came about. We went to LA for the first time with the Almighty, and we played at the legendary Cat Club, and there was a huge buzz about the band at that point in the States, which was fantastic. So played this packed show, and there's a guy there called Del James. Now, Del is a writer, but Del's well known. He's been Axl Rose's tour manager and Axl Rose's best friend for the last 40 years. And Del came along, and Del and I hit it off. And Del, you know, I was back at his place, and we're just talking about songs and songwriting. He showed me a couple of verses of Bandaged Knees that he'd written. It wasn't finished. And he just said, this is a song I'm writing about, you know, Christmas. And I said, oh, man, I'm Christmas songs. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Roll on 30 years. Anyway, so he said, well, you know, Christmas, everybody that seems to be, you know, have no money or has a drink or a drug issue or family issues, they just seem to be magnified so much more at Christmas. I said, I wanted to write something for those people, not for the jolly happy Christmas, everything's amazing, you know, folk that are out there, because there's a lot of people that are hurting, and they hurt even more at Christmas time. And I just thought, well, I thought that's fantastic. And I read the lyrics and I went, these are amazing. And we finished the lyrics. I took it back. We worked the song up in Glasgow. And yeah, it became Bandaged Knees, and it's just a song, you know, it's a song for, you know, the lost and the lonely and the dispossessed at Christmas. You know, it's their anthem. It's their, you know, well, you're all having a good time and getting far too many presents and eating too much food, please spare a thought for the people that aren't.
And I hear that you got some very direct feedback from a friend on it, yeah.
Who's that?
The guy that was telling you about the actual title with the Bandaged Knees.
Oh, the whole cat house story. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, I mean, that was just brilliant. That was just, we were hanging out at the cat house in Glasgow at the time, you know, after rehearsals a lot. And of course we got to know everybody in there. And when the Soul Destruction was coming out, you know, one of the big bouncers in there, you know, pulled me aside. I mean, I'll tell the abbreviated story, you know, pulled me aside, and I thought, God, what have I done? You know, I'm in trouble. This big Rab's going to kill me here. This guy's built like Ben Nevis, you know. And he pulls me aside, and he's choked up, man. He's really choked up. And he goes, I just got the new album. And I'm like, shit, have I offended him? What, you know, does he not like, does he hate it that much? I'm going, Rob, you all right, Rob? He goes, oh, man. He goes, that song. I went, what song? You know, and it's like, I'm going, fuck, you know, what have I done? You know, he goes, Bandaged Knees. He goes, oh, man. And he goes, and I went, pretty heavy song, Rob, you know, a lot of darkness in that song, mate, you know. He goes, you know, the problem I've had over the years with my knees. And I was about to go, well, it's actually a metaphor for, you know, people that are, you know, and I just thought, no, that's what it means to him. It's about his knees. It's about people with, you know, I just thought, isn't it brilliant that this guy thinks I wrote a song about people with like muscular problems, and, you know, and it was just one of those beautiful Glaswegian moments that you just go, this is genius. And I just went, oh, well, Rob, I'm glad you got something out of it, my friend, you know. You know.
But also, more importantly, just as you say, it's leaving songs up to interpretation, no matter what they're going to be, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, you know, and that's the beauty of it. I really, you know, when I write a song, I certainly have a subject in mind, and I'm meaning something when I write the lyrics, but that doesn't always connect directly with the person that listens to it, because they might think it's about something completely different, and that's cool. That's great, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. No, look, Blood Ties, great songs, great singing, all of that stuff you would expect from Ricky Warwick. Fantastic guitar tones, of course, throughout the record. Can you talk us through the gear that you used on this one?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the good thing about Keith Nelson, anybody who doesn't know Keith was the guitar player in Buckcherry for many years, was instrumental in co-writing a lot of their biggest hits. Is a phenomenal guitar player. Keith's a phenomenal musician. He's a great drummer as well. Great engineer, great producer. But he has a serious vintage guitar collection. Serious. So you're looking at some, you know, I mean, 58 Les Pauls, you're looking at some old tellies from the 60s. We used 12-string Rickenbacker, you know, mostly Les Pauls. I used all his, I didn't even use any of my guitars because he's just got the collection in the studio. My sound, JCM 800. Sometimes I would use a couple of pedals, maybe a super overdrive or a blues driver, boss blues driver. Simple as that. Keith would have a various couple of different of amps that he would use. We ultimately would go through a Marshall Plexi sometimes. I think he had is it a Bogner amp? Is that what they're called?
Sure, yeah.
One of those as well. I mean, I very much have my sound. It's my Marshall JCM 800, and I don't deviate from that too much when I'm in the studio. And then, you know, bass wise, you know, we were through Ampeg. We just use a Fender Precision. Very, very classic rock and roll. You know what I mean?
Of course. Well, that's it. If it's still broke, you don't fix it, and you hear that right from those opening riffs. Yeah. You're sort of thinking, this is
no plugins on anything. It was all real valve amps in the cabinets, mic'd up, old school.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you find that having your own sound like that, you know, is a little bit of a comfort blanket when it comes to getting in the studio, you know, because that way these days there's so many different options, different pedals, different plugins, all these different things that you can do, that it can end up taking you kind of away from the whole point of creating the song. I mean,
Absolutely.
You want like something.
100%. And I think, you know, a lot of the plugins just make every guitar sound the same as well. And you lose that vibiness and earthiness that you get out of a tube amp that I just don't think you can replace. Same way I don't think AI can replace the soul of a human being in studio singing or playing their part. I think that'll never be replaced by any technology. So I think that was important. You know, I have a guitar sound in my head when I hear it, and it took me a long time to get that. Now it changes. Obviously, I wouldn't use the same guitar sound for Ricky Warwick that I use for the Almighty. It's different. That's a whole different beast, you know. But for the solo stuff, it's almost clean overdriven. You know, I use live. I'm using the Gretsch Broadcaster, which is the hollow body, and I use a lot of P90s live with the Ricky Warwick stuff as well, because I get that real crunch, but it's driven as well. But it's not distorted. It's kind of it's hard to describe. It's like clean distortion. That does. Everybody goes, "What the fuck's he talking about?" But you know what I mean.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's probably closer to Malcolm Young sound than anything else, but I'm playing so many open chords. There's so many minor sevenths in the writing of that stuff that we do. There's a lot of ringing strings, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of capo action going on as well. So that's all really important to me, to have the clarity in the sound as well as the drive.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now you're a very busy man. Obviously, you get this great solo record and the stuff with the Almighty. You're going to be touring and all that sort of stuff. But I've got to ask, you know, where are we with Thin Lizzy?
The honest answer is I don't really know. Scott, I sort of stepped back in the last couple of years to take some time away to work on his, you know, he's got his art stuff going on now, which is fantastic. He's put a lot of time into that. You know, so if he wants to take Lizzy back out again, of course I'm there if he gives me the call, and he knows that. I mean, we're still great friends. We still talk all the time. But I'm not putting any pressure on him. It's his thing. And when he wants, if and when he wants to do it, I will be there for him. If he doesn't want to do it, that's okay. It's been a fantastic experience. The fact that I got to just even, if it had been one show, it would have been fabulous. You know what I mean? But the fact that so much more than that, for me, just what an experience and what an honor just to be a small part of the legacy of that phenomenal band.
If you were a betting man, would you say there could be another show?
I don't know. Honestly, don't know. I'd say it's 50-50.
Nice one. Yeah, no, no. Well, I'll take 50 over anything less than that. I would love to see it because fantastic in that band, and it was
Thank
always
you.
a
Thank you.
great
And
great great
I would
performance.
admit, I just love playing those songs and singing those great songs that Phil and the boys wrote. They're phenomenal, and I owe that a lot because again, just that whole experience made me a better singer and better player, and it pushed me even harder just to be a part of such an amazing rock and roll band.
Yeah, well, it's it. Well, this is the thing. When you did it, I mean, look, it, anything post 2000 feels recent to me, but the
I
world
know.
has changed quite a lot since 2010, and now and you see so many different celebration acts and
Yeah.
reformations, but it's not really quite a so it took balls of steel to step up on
Thank
stage
you.
and,
I know.
and,
So I
and
knew
do
all the
that.
risks involved, and I knew. I mean, I being the massive Lizzie fan that I am, I knew
Mm.
a lot of people would think, and I knew that a lot of people wouldn't be on board, but I had to look at it from, let's be honest. Look, sadly, every month we're losing one of our artists. They're dying. We're getting old. It's
Mm.
happening. It's happening. And that if you were an artist, why would you want your music to die with you? That doesn't make sense. Why would you want everything you stood for to be gone when you're gone? I mean, personally, I would love it if people would keep playing my songs for the next, infinity. And and I think most musicians are the same. People, the legacy lives on. The songs stand the test of time. You're writing something that is there and etched in history that can't be taken away. And I think if you're playing it with heart and soul and it's being delivered with the right intent, there's nothing wrong with it. I didn't go in and go, I'm replacing Phil. I'm the new lead singer of Thin Lizzy. I never said that one. I've never said that once, and I never did. I always said, I'm getting the chance to sing these songs that Phil and the guys wrote. There's one lead singer in Thin Lizzy, and that's Phil. That's it. When I close my eyes, I do not see me singing with Thin Lizzy. I see Phil, and that's the way everybody should see it because that's what it is. But there's a lot of people that didn't get to see Lizzy, weren't born, or for whatever reason didn't see Lizzy first time round. And is this as close as they're going to get? Probably. Then that's not a bad thing. And the fact that people vote with their feet as well, and the fact that the shows did so well, and the fact that Jim Fitzpatrick came along, and I met Phil's mom, and they loved it, and they said how much they thought Phil would have loved it, and been into the fact that his music was being played and with passion and intent, and
Oh yeah, no, it was celebrated for a reason. And look, just with you mentioning people passing on, and we're talking about Thin
yeah,
Lizzy and all that, I couldn't not mention John Sykes. I mean, somebody who
of course.
I'm assuming you guys didn't run into each other often, but was there a respect there for John?
Listen, I never met John. Never met him. John sort of, as most people know, he sort of stepped back from the whole thing for quite a number of years there. And there was rumors that he was going to be doing a record, and that obviously never transpired. So by the time that Scott had got the version of Lizzy back together that I was in, that had sort of already happened. But as a musician, as a great singer as well, as a guitar player, I mean, the guy was phenomenal. Sadly, I just never got to meet the man. I would love to have met him, but it just didn't happen. But yeah, what a great loss. And I think the fact that nobody actually knew that the poor guy was ill, it came right out of the blue was a real shock for a lot of people.
It definitely was. One final Thin Lizzy one, Ricky. Look,
Come on.
there's been God knows how many members of Thin Lizzy now at this point. When you look at that list through from the guys we've mentioned to guys like Midure, that have
Yeah,
been
of
on the
course.
tour. And if you were drafting, a fantasy Thin Lizzy lineup, but you've got to put yourself in somewhere. All right.
Oh, I
What's
couldn't.
your
I
what's
wouldn't
your
put.
dream lineup?
I just wouldn't put myself in because I want to be there as a fan. I mean, for me, it's obviously Brian Downey, it's Scott Gorham. You know, see, my favorite. This is so obviously Phil. I mean, of course, my favorite and Darren. I think I like some of the later stuff with Darren. I think Angel of Death is a great song. I used to play it live and I love playing it. But Robbo and Gary, I love both for many different reasons. Now, Black Rose is my favorite Lizzy. If I had to pick a Lizzy album, it would be Black Rose. I just love the playing and the songs on that. But Robbo, being Glaswegian, obviously that strikes a chord, and he's so young and so gifted. So I'd like to have both of them in. I'm not sure how that would work with Scott, Robbo, and Gary, but I'd love to have seen that with the three guitars. But again, being obviously born in Northern Ireland and being from here, I mean, I've got to just Gary just edges it for me.
Of course, no. Well, you can't criticise that choice at all. There's no bad choices there, I don't think. And
well, that's the problem. There isn't, and it's like for me, there's no bad Lizzy songs. Yeah, there's some songs that I certainly prefer over others, but when a Lizzy song comes on, no matter what it is, I never turn it off or skip to
it. Yeah, no, of course. That man, I'm an absolutely huge Lizzy fan. Of course, I do always laugh a little bit though with Jailbreak, because I sort of think it's going to be somewhere in the town. Well, it's going to be at the jail.
Well, that's it, isn't it? But that who could get away with that? Phil's if anybody, Phil gets away with that, because he just does. He's so poetic, and he's so much metaphors and ideology and poetry in his lyrics. It's just amazing.
Absolutely.
I never learned so much from somebody that's no longer with us in my life, studying his stuff,
Incredible. Well, look, congratulations on the new record, Blood Ties, that drops next week, Ricky. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, and I look forward to seeing you when you're playing in London next.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, mate. Have a good one.